He slipped it into my glass like he was salting a steak. My name is Richard, and at 27, I was a commercial construction guy in Tucson, about to marry the woman I loved. It should have been the best night of my life. Instead, I was watching my future father-in-law try to poison me at my own engagement party. His name was Gerald, 56, and he owned a chain of hardware stores across Arizona. He was a big guy with a booming voice, the kind of man who believed respect was something you demanded, not earned. Gerald had hated me from the moment his daughter, Vanessa, brought me home 3 years ago. I wasn't good enough, not rich enough, not connected enough, just some blue-collar guy who wore boots to work and drove a 10-year-old truck. But Vanessa loved me, and for me, that was enough. Apparently for Gerald, it wasn't. The party was at some upscale downtown Tucson venue. White tablecloths, string lights, a jazz trio in the corner. Gerald had insisted on paying for everything. I should have known better than to accept. Men like him don't give without strings attached. They invest. They control. I was sitting at the head table. Vanessa was across the room talking to her bridesmaids. My mom, who was all I had since my dad passed 4 years ago, was chatting with cousins. I could see the pride in her eyes every time she looked at me. Gerald sat down next to me, smelling of expensive cologne and whiskey. He didn't say anything at first, just stared out at the crowd like he owned them. Maybe he did. Half the people there were his business associates. He leaned in close. "You ready for the toast, Richard?" "Yeah," I replied. "Looking forward to it." "Good, good." He patted my shoulder. "Big moment. Everyone's watching." The way he said it made my skin crawl. There was an edge in his voice, a smugness, like he knew something I didn't. The waitstaff started bringing out the champagne glasses. Crystal, expensive. Gerald made sure everyone knew it. He stood up and clinked his glass with a fork, and the room quieted. He gave a speech about family tradition and how happy he was to welcome me into the fold. It was a performance. I could see the lies in his eyes. When he sat back down, he placed a champagne glass in front of me and then one in front of himself. I didn't think much of it until I saw him glance around, making sure no one was watching. And that's when he did it. He pulled a small vial of clear liquid from his jacket pocket. He uncapped it with his thumb and poured it into my glass, fast, smooth, like he'd practiced. I froze. My brain struggled to process what I'd just seen. This man, my future father-in-law, had just spiked my drink. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking under the table. What the hell was in that vial? A sedative? A laxative? Something worse? Gerald leaned back in his chair, relaxed and confident, swirling his own glass. He was waiting. The toast was in 2 minutes. I'd raise that glass, drink it, and whatever he'd put in there would take effect in front of everyone. My fiancé, my mom, our friends. I would be humiliated, maybe worse, but he didn't know I had seen him. I glanced at Vanessa. She was laughing with her sister, so happy, so oblivious. This was supposed to be our night, and her father was trying to destroy it. I looked back at Gerald. He was sipping his whiskey, smug, untouchable. That's when I made the decision. I waited until he turned his head for just a second to wave at some business partner across the room. In that moment, I switched the glasses. Mine to his spot, his to mine. It was smooth, clean. No one saw, not even him. When he turned back, he didn't notice. Why would he? They were identical glasses. He had no reason to check. I picked up the clean glass in front of me, his original, and I waited. Gerald stood up again and tapped his glass. All right, everyone. Time for the traditional toast. Richard, stand up. I stood. My legs felt weak, but I kept my face neutral. To my future son-in-law, Gerald said, raising his glass. May you always know your place in this family. The room chuckled, thinking it was a joke. I knew better. To family, I said, raising my glass. Everyone raised theirs. The room echoed with clinking crystal, and we drank. I took a small sip. Gerald, ever the show-off, drained half his glass in one go. I sat back down and waited. At first, nothing happened. Gerald was talking to someone at the next table, laughing, shaking hands, playing the proud father. Then about 3 minutes in, I saw it. He blinked hard as if something was off. He shook his head, touching his temple. 4 minutes. He loosened his tie, wiping his forehead with a napkin. 5 minutes. He stood up, swayed a little, and grabbed the table for balance. Vanessa noticed. Dad, you okay? Fine, he slurred. Just warm in here. 6 minutes. That's when things got interesting. Gerald had always been a controlling man. He ran his household like he ran his business, with an iron fist and zero tolerance for weakness. His controlling nature had driven Vanessa's mom away years ago. Over the past 3 years, he had found every way to remind me I wasn't good enough, comparing me to successful men in finance or law. He constantly talked down to me, even waving off my civil engineering degree as not a real degree. Tonight, though, something had shifted. I had seen the real him, the man behind the mask, and now I was watching him unravel. He wiped his forehead again. His face was flushed, red and sweaty. He looked around the room like he was trying to remember where he was. "Dad, sit down," Vanessa said, standing up, concerned. "I'm fine," he said, his voice too loud, too loose. He took a step forward, stumbled, and caught himself on a chair. People were starting to notice. The jazz trio stopped playing. Conversations died down. Gerald straightened up, looked at the crowd, and then he smiled. Wide, manic. "You know what?" he boomed. "I love this song." There was no song playing. He started humming off-key, some tune I didn't recognize. Then he started singing, loud and confident, completely out of nowhere. "Mamma mia, here I go again. My, how can I resist you?" He was singing ABBA at the top of his lungs at my engagement party. Vanessa's jaw dropped. "Dad, what are you doing?" He ignored her, fully committed now, dancing, swaying, snapping his fingers. The whole room was frozen. He grabbed a fork off the table and held it like a microphone. "Mamma mia, does it show again? My, just how much I've missed you." He spun around and pointed at my 83-year-old grandmother. He walked over to her, leaned down, and stuck out his fist. "Come on, Grandma." Fist bump. My grandmother stared at him, terrified. He bumped his fist against hers anyway. She flinched. The room erupted. Half the people were laughing. The other half looked horrified. Vanessa covered her face with her hands. I just sat there watching. Part of me wanted to stop it. The other part wanted to see how far it would go. Gerald climbed onto a chair, still singing, still holding the fork microphone. His tie was undone, his shirt half untucked. He looked like a drunk uncle at a wedding. This was going to be all over social media by tomorrow. Vanessa grabbed my arm. "Richard, do something." I stood up slowly and walked over to him. He saw me coming and grinned, throwing his arm around my shoulder. "Richard, my boy, my future son-in-law." He was slurring hard now. "You know what? You're all right. You're all right, Gerald. I think you need to sit down." No. We're celebrating." He turned back to the crowd. "This man right here, he's marrying my daughter. And you know what? I respect that. I do." He stopped singing and looked down at me, his eyes glassy and unfocused. "Richard," he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're a good man. You know that. No, seriously. I mean it. You're solid like a rock. A rock." He laughed at his own joke. "Get it? Construction rocks." "Dad, let me take you outside," Vanessa pleaded, next to us now, her voice strained. "Outside? No, I'm fine. I'm great. Best night of my life." Then he did something unforgettable. He unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of his shirt, enough to show his chest hair and a gold chain. "It's hot in here. Anyone else hot?" He fanned himself, and then he started doing the sprinkler, arms swinging, hips rotating. He was fully committed. The room exploded with full-on belly laughs. Gerald stopped dancing, looking around confused, like he'd just realized where he was. "Wait, what were we doing?" "You were giving a toast," someone shouted. "A toast, right?" "Right." He grabbed the nearest champagne glass, raised it high. "To Richard and Vanessa. May they, He forgot what he was saying, just stood there, glass in the air, mouth open, blank stare, then he burped. Loud, long, the kind that echoes. The room erupted again. People were doubled over laughing. My grandma was crying from laughing so hard. Gerald blinked, looked at the glass in his hand and drank it. Then he looked at me. "You're a good kid, Richard. Don't let anyone tell you different." And then he collapsed. He didn't fall dramatically. He just kind of folded in on himself. Knees buckled. He hit the floor out cold. Vanessa screamed. People rushed over. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. They checked him out. Vitals were stable. They concluded it looked like he'd had too much to drink, combined with exhaustion, maybe a reaction to something. They loaded him onto a stretcher and took him to the hospital for observation. Vanessa went with them. She didn't say anything to me. She just left. Her sister stayed behind to try and salvage what was left of the night, but the party was over. As guests left, offering condolences or still snickering, I stood alone at the head table, staring at the 2 champagne glasses, both empty now. I thought about what he had tried to do. The vile, the poor, the smug look on his face. He thought he had won. He thought he could embarrass me and prove I wasn't good enough. But he had underestimated me. I had seen it coming and I had turned it back on him. I picked up his glass, the one he had drunk from, held it up to the light and wondered what had been in it. Whatever it was, it had certainly done a number on him instead. My mom walked over, putting her hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine." That was something. Yeah. She studied my face. "You don't seem surprised." I looked at her. She knew. Somehow she knew. "He tried to drug me," I said quietly. I switched the glasses. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled. Small. Proud. "Good." We didn't say anything else. We just stood there. The venue was nearly empty, the jazz trio packing up. The string lights still glowed overhead, but the magic was gone. This is the continuation of a highly dramatic story. I will rewrite this segment to maintain the tense, strategic tone while enhancing the emotional stakes and narrative flow. Vanessa didn't come back that night. I texted, I called, but there was no response. I figured she needed space to process the humiliation. Her father had ruined the party and by extension embarrassed her, but he had done it to himself. That was the part she didn't yet understand. I was done feeling guilty. I drove home alone, my mom following in her car. Sitting on my couch, I replayed the night. Gerald's face as he drank the champagne, the confusion, the terrible singing, the collapse. It should have been my worst night. Instead, it was oddly satisfying. Not because I enjoyed seeing him suffer, but because, for once, he didn't get to control the outcome. For once, I had the power, and that felt good. Vanessa didn't speak to me for 3 days. I called, I texted, I even showed up at her apartment. Nothing. Her sister finally answered the door on day 3 and told me Vanessa needed time. Her father was still in the hospital. Doctors were running tests, and she was embarrassed, hurt, and confused. I wanted to tell her the truth, that her father had tried to poison me, that everything that happened was his own doing. But I kept my mouth shut. Without proof, it would just sound like an excuse, like I was trying to shift the blame. So I waited. Gerald was released from the hospital after 2 days. The doctor said he had a severe reaction to alcohol, mixed with some unknown substance they couldn't identify. Gerald played the victim, of course, claiming he had no idea how it got into his system. Someone must have spiked his drink as a prank. When Vanessa finally called me, her voice was cold, distant. "We need to talk." We met at a coffee shop near her apartment, neutral ground. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. She sat across from me and didn't touch her coffee. "My dad wants to postpone the wedding," she said. My chest tightened. Why, because he embarrassed himself? "He says we need time. That what happened at the engagement party was a sign that we rushed into things." "Vanessa, your father got drunk and made a fool of himself. That has nothing to do with us. He thinks someone drugged him, Richard, and he thinks it might have been you." There it was. I leaned back and stared at her. "You think I drugged your father?" I don't know what to think. "Vanessa, I was sitting next to him the entire time. If anyone drugged him, it wasn't me. Then who was it?" I could have told her right then. I could have explained what I saw. But the way she was looking at me, like she had already made up her mind, like she would believe him over me no matter what I said, stopped me. "I don't know," I said. "But it was not me." She nodded slowly, as if trying to convince herself. "He wants me to move back home for a while until we figure this out." "Figure what out?" "There's nothing to figure out. Your father got drunk and humiliated himself. That's it. He doesn't get drunk, Richard. He had 2 glasses of champagne. That's not enough to do what happened to him. Then maybe he took something before the party. Maybe he mixed medications. I don't know, Vanessa, but I didn't do anything to him." She stood up. "I need space. I need to think. Vanessa, please, I'll call you." She left, didn't finish her coffee, and didn't look back. I sat there for an hour, my engagement crumbling because Gerald had tried to ruin me and ended up ruining himself. And now he was successfully spinning the narrative to make me the villain. I knew confronting him without proof would be useless. I needed to be smarter. Over the next week, I started digging. I reached out to people who knew Gerald, business associates, old employees. I wanted to know what kind of man he really was. What I found wasn't surprising, but it was damning. Gerald had a reputation for being ruthless and vindictive. He'd destroyed competitors, squeezed out business partners, and there were rumors of blackmail. A former employee told me he once sabotaged a supplier. Another mentioned an old harassment lawsuit that Gerald had paid off and buried with an NDA. This was the man Vanessa defended. I started compiling everything: emails, testimonies, public records. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I needed ammunition. Men like Gerald don't tolerate threats, and I knew he wasn't going to stop. 2 weeks after the party, Vanessa called me again. Her voice was different now, softer, apologetic. "Can we meet?" We met at the same coffee shop. This time she looked rested and ordered her usual vanilla latte extra foam. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have accused you." "It's okay." "No, it's not. I was scared, and I let my dad get in my head. But I know you, Richard. You wouldn't do something like that." I wanted to believe her, but I could see the doubt lingering in her eyes. She was saying the words, but she didn't fully mean them. "What changed?" I asked. She hesitated. "My dad found the vial." My stomach dropped. "What?" "The vial. The one with whatever was in his drink. He found it in his jacket pocket. He thinks someone planted it there to frame him." "Of course he did. Did he go to the police?" "No. He doesn't want to make a bigger deal out of this. He just wants to move on, and he thinks we should too. He said he'll support the wedding." He was wrong to suggest postponing it. I didn't buy it. Gerald didn't just change his mind. He was up to something. "That's great," I said, forcing a smile. Vanessa reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you, Richard. I don't want to lose you over this. You're not going to lose me." But I knew the trust between us was fractured, and Gerald was the one holding the hammer. The next few weeks were tense. We resumed wedding planning, but everything felt strained. Vanessa was constantly on her phone, checking in with her dad. Gerald, meanwhile, was playing nice. Too nice. He invited me to lunch. "Just the two of us," he said, to clear the air. I knew it was a trap, but I went anyway. I needed to know what he was planning. We met at a downtown steakhouse. Gerald was already there, sitting in a corner booth, expensive suit, Rolex watch. He stood up, shook my hand, a firm, dominant grip. "Richard, thanks for coming." Of course, we sat and ordered drinks. He got whiskey. "I got water. I want to apologize," he said, "for what happened at the engagement party. I was out of line. I've been under a lot of stress." He leaned forward. "I also want to apologize for accusing you. Vanessa told me I was unfair. She was right. You are a good man, Richard. I see that now. He was lying." I could see it in his eyes, in the way his smile lingered a second too long. "I appreciate that. Good, so let's move forward. Clean slate. I want to help you and Vanessa make sure the wedding is perfect." He paused. "Actually, I've been thinking. You work in construction, right?" "Project manager." "Good money." "I do," he nodded. "I have a proposal for you. I'm expanding my business. I need someone to manage all the construction, renovations, and build-outs." "Interested?" It sounded too good to be true because it was. "I already have a job." "I know, but this would be better. Better pay, better benefits. You'd be working for family." There it was, the hook. Working for him meant being under his control, dependent on him, indebted to him. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy where I am." His smile faltered. "You sure?" "This is a big opportunity." "I'm sure." The rest of the lunch was uncomfortable. He kept circling back to the job offer, trying different angles, talking about security and providing for Vanessa. But I didn't budge. As we left, he shook my hand again. "Think about it, Richard. The offer stands." I knew I wouldn't. I drove home and called an old friend, Trevor, a private investigator who specialized in corporate espionage. "I need you to look into someone," I said. "Gerald, my future father-in-law. I need everything." Trevor was good. Within a week, he had a file, thick, detailed, and damning. Gerald had built his business on lies, stolen ideas, manipulated contracts, and bribed inspectors. There were multiple lawsuits, all settled out of court, all buried under NDAs. But the worst part was the fraud. Gerald had been skimming money from his own company, hiding it in offshore accounts and cooking the books to avoid taxes. If the IRS ever found out, he would be ruined. And then there was the vial. Trevor tracked down the supplier, a shady online pharmacy. The substance Gerald had ordered was a strong, fast-acting sedative, the kind used in date rape cases. Gerald had ordered it 3 weeks before the engagement party, shipped to a P.O. box, but Trevor traced the credit card. It was his. I had him. I sat in my apartment staring at the file. I knew showing Vanessa wouldn't work. She wouldn't believe it. Or she'd believe it and blame me for digging into her father's past. I needed to be strategic. I called Trevor. "Can you make copies of everything?" "Already done. I figured you'd want backups." "Good, hold on to them. I might need them later." 2 months passed. The wedding was back on track. Vanessa was happy, planning, excited. Gerald played the doting father, but I saw through the act, the cold calculation in his eyes when no one was watching. He was waiting for something. But I was ready. The rehearsal dinner arrived. Gerald pulled me aside on the patio. "Big day tomorrow," he said. "You nervous?" "A little." "Marriage is hard, Richard." "Harder than you think." He looked at me, the mask slipping. "Once you're in, there's no easy way out. You're stuck with her, with me, with this family." "I love Vanessa. That's all that matters in love," he scoffed. "Love doesn't pay the bills. Money, power, control, that's what does." He turned to face me. "I've come to a realization. You are not good enough for my daughter. You never were and you never will be. Then why did you let the wedding go forward?" "Because Vanessa loves you for some reason. And I love my daughter, so I am willing to tolerate you for now. But understand this, Richard. You are on borrowed time. One mistake, one slip-up, and I will make sure she sees you for what you really are." He smiled, patted my shoulder, and walked back inside. I stood on the patio. Gerald had just declared war. I went inside and texted Trevor. "Tomorrow after the ceremony, be ready." The wedding day was perfect. Clear skies, a garden estate, flowers everywhere. Vanessa looked beautiful, glowing. The ceremony went smoothly. We exchanged vows, exchanged rings, and kissed. The reception was at the same venue. Dinner, dancing. Gerald gave a speech welcoming me to the family. But I was waiting for the perfect moment. It came during the cake cutting. Everyone gathered around. We cut the first slice, fed each other. Then Gerald stood up, raised his glass. "One more toast to the happy couple." "Richard," he said, smiling that same smug smile from the engagement party. "I just want you to know I am proud of you. You have proven yourself, and I know you are going to take care of my daughter." I smiled back, then nodded to Trevor, who was standing near the entrance, a camera in his hand. He hit play on the projector. The screen behind the head table lit up. Everyone turned to look. At first, it was just documents, financial records, bank statements, offshore accounts, Gerald's name at the top of every page. Then came the emails, threats, bribes, evidence of fraud. Then the most damning photo, the receipt for the sedative, Gerald's name, the P.O. box, and the date. The room went silent. Gerald's face went white. He set down his glass and stared at the screen. Vanessa looked at me, confused. "Richard, what is this?" "The truth," I said. "About your father." Gerald stood up. "Turn that off now!" But the slideshow continued. More evidence, more lies, more betrayals. Everything Trevor had found laid out for everyone to see. "He tried to drug me," I said, my voice steady and calm, echoing in the silent room. At our engagement party, he spiked my drink. "This is the final powerful act of the story. I will structure the rewrite to maximize the emotional impact of the confrontation and the eventual rebuilding of Richard and Vanessa's lives." And with a sedative, but I saw him and I switched the glasses. Everything that happened that night was his own doing. Vanessa's mouth fell open. She looked at her father. "Dad?" Gerald didn't answer. He was frozen. "He has been stealing from his own company," I continued, my voice clear in the stunned silence. "Hiding money, bribing officials. And when I wouldn't work for him, when I wouldn't let him control me, he decided I was a threat. So he tried to get rid of me." The room erupted. People were shouting, talking over each other, and cameras were flashing wildly. Vanessa started crying and her sister rushed to her side. Gerald finally moved. He lunged toward the projector, trying to shut it off, but Trevor was faster. He grabbed Gerald's arm and pulled him back. "Let go of me," Gerald roared. "Not a chance," Trevor said. Security and the venue manager showed up and they escorted Gerald out. He was yelling, cursing, and blaming me, blaming everyone but himself until his voice faded into the night. The reception was over. People left in a daze of whispers and shock. Vanessa remained seated at the head table, staring blankly. I sat next to her and took her hand. "I'm sorry," I said. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" I tried, but you wouldn't have believed me. Not without proof, she nodded slowly. He's my dad, Richard. My dad? I know. How are you supposed to process this? I don't know, but we will figure it out together. She squeezed my hand and we sat there in the ruins of our wedding, holding on to each other. The fallout was immediate and brutal. By the next morning, the wedding videos were everywhere. Social media exploded, and news outlets picked up the story of the hardware store mogul exposed at his daughter's wedding. The man who tried to drug his future son-in-law, who built an empire on fraud and intimidation. Gerald's business partners started distancing themselves within hours, releasing carefully worded statements condemning his actions. The rats were abandoning a sinking ship. The IRS launched an investigation that same week. Once Trevor's evidence went public, they had no choice. Federal agents showed up at Gerald's office, seizing records and freezing accounts. His team of expensive lawyers scrambled, but there was too much proof. Gerald, sloppy and arrogant, thought his money made him untouchable. Now it was all catching up to him. His hardware stores started closing. Employees walked out. Some had been waiting years for this moment. Suppliers cut ties and customers boycotted. The empire he spent 30 years building crumbled in less than 3 weeks. Vanessa struggled immensely. She moved in with her sister temporarily, needing space from both me and her father. I understood. This was no longer just about Gerald's actions. It was about the lie that had been the foundation of her life. I gave her time, checking in every few days, making sure she knew I wasn't going anywhere. 3 weeks after the wedding that never finished, she called and asked to meet. We went to a park near her sister's place and walked along a desert trail, the Arizona heat pressing down on us. I talked to my mom, she finally said, her voice quiet and tired. How is she? She knew about my dad, about what he was capable of. That's why she left. Vanessa stopped and turned to me, her eyes red. She said she tried to tell me when I was younger, but I didn't want to hear it. I thought she was just a bitter ex trying to turn me against him. You were a kid, I said. I was. But I'm not anymore. And I should have seen it. The signs were always there. The way he treated the waitstaff. The way he needed to control everyone. I just chose to ignore it because he was my dad and I wanted him to be good. It's natural to want to believe the best of your father. She nodded and wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, Richard, for doubting you, for not believing you when you tried to tell me, for letting him get between us. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. You were right about him from the beginning, and I was too blind, too scared to see it. I took her hand and squeezed it. We are going to be okay, are we? How do we come back from this? One day at a time, together. She leaned into me, and we stood there on the trail, holding each other, starting over. Gerald was arrested 2 weeks later for tax evasion, wire fraud, bribery, and attempted assault with a dangerous substance. The charges kept piling up. His lawyers scrambled, but the prosecution wasn't interested in deals. They wanted to make an example of him. He made bail, but he was a broken man. Assets frozen, reputation destroyed, and his daughter wouldn't speak to him. He was incapable of real love, only control, and Vanessa was finally done trying to earn his approval. Vanessa and I got married again 2 months later. Quietly at a courthouse in Tucson. Just us, my mom and her sister. No reception, no speeches, no champagne toasts, no drama. Just 2 people making a promise to each other the way it should have been from the start. It was perfect. 4 months after that, we moved to Colorado Springs for a fresh start. I took a new construction job and Vanessa began working remotely as a graphic designer. We bought a small 2-bedroom house with mountain views. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. No one else's money, no strings attached. Just us building something real. Life became quiet and simple. We went hiking, explored the trails around Pikes Peak, and found normal rhythm. Vanessa rarely talked about her father, and when she did, it was detached as if she were talking about a stranger. The man she thought she knew never existed. He was always a fabrication. Her mother reached out and they began rebuilding their relationship slowly, finding comfort in shared understanding. My mom visited often, telling stories about the genuine partnership she and my dad had built. A life based on respect and trust, not control. One Saturday afternoon, sitting in our backyard watching storm clouds, Vanessa turned to me. Do you ever think about that night? She asked quietly. The engagement party? Sometimes. Do you regret it? I thought about it, about the chaos and the destruction. No, I don't. Your family was already destroyed, Vanessa. Your father did that, not me. I just exposed it. If I hadn't done it then, he would have found another way to come after me. After us. Men like him don't stop, she nodded slowly. I know. Thank you for protecting me, even when I fought you on it. Always. We sat there until the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky with the same orange and pink streaks from that night. Gerald told me I was on borrowed time. He was wrong. I was not weak and I was not going to be controlled. Gerald's trial never happened. He died of a massive heart attack 5 months after his arrest. The stress had been too much. He died alone in his condo, a disgraced man who destroyed everything he touched. Vanessa didn't go to the funeral. His assets were liquidated to cover his debts, and his name became a cautionary tale in business circles. His former employees came forward sharing their stories, and his legacy turned to ash. Sometimes the best revenge is just giving someone enough rope and watching them hang themselves with it. We were free, and we were building our future on solid ground.